We're talking about something that is active here, and perhaps we are not listening to our audience, and we're talking to ourselves. We're churning out papers, we're putting out broadcasts that are, to be honest, for us, not for you. And perhaps that's where we're also going wrong in not being able to sell, because here at the Nation Media Group, at the Daily Nation, there's a lot happening. People are being laid off. At Radio African, Kibi will tell us better, at the radio broadcasting division, there's more layoffs that has happened this January.
Yes.
Yes, and it's going on in different places. At the BBC, they've also announced that they're going to lay off people to save money. The question is, Makali, because of money, the people who are being laid off, the older journalists, they cost more. So bring in cheaper labor. Is that the right approach to all this?
I think it's a really tough situation for media ownership and management, because on the one hand, you want to make your operation sustainable. You need the money to keep the operation going. Keeping, the older hands, veterans like senior here, if they want to, this guy costs 10 new journalists. I wish to keep a Nation media house, media group. So there has to be a balance, though. I mean, there is a way in which the companies have to balance between new and fresh blood in the industry,
yes,
as well as the old ones. So there's a process of mentorship and support, and that comes towards the production processes of these media houses. Because if you look at, for example, the politics of this country, if you get the younger generation journalists, they cannot tell you stories of what transpired in the 90s and 80s and earlier. Yet those same politicians and the political phenomena are happening today because the country has not transited politically.
Yes.
And yet to expect this younger generation of people to be dealing with these old foxes. You must have a background, you must understand how they work, their systems and where they've come from, for you to understand and interpret what they are saying and what they're doing. And two, it takes a lot of contacts and a lot of experience, networking, to get people who can give you information that is useful as a resource for you to share with your audiences. So there is a really catch-22 situation here, because do you want new guys who are younger and sharper, perhaps faster, more fleet-footed, who can do the job of today because we are digital?
Yes.
And then you leave out the old geezers like myself and Frances Magaido. Or do you keep us somewhere in the background, pay us less, but we do advisory or consultancy services to keep the industry and the information business up to speed?
Yeah.
I think that is what the management has to begin thinking of doing, because otherwise we'll continue getting trashed. And I see a lot of that on social media or Gidere media. What are these guys telling us? They are shallow, they are whatnot. All these issues are because, one, the investment that's required to get better information is a challenge to media houses because of declining revenues. And then two, the experience basically of the people who are on the front line and who must be there is not sufficient to dig up what people think they need to be served. But also, additionally, there's just a general skepticism and cynicism in the public domain about anything. So even those people who are dismissing media and saying, look, you guys are giving us nonsense, if you ask them to give you alternative sources of information or where they'll go, they have nowhere. They'll go and land into social media and all those things which have no verification, no truth. It's just, a wild a forest.
But Sylvia says something interesting. I mean, she's talking about people coming back to legacy media to get the confirmation.
Yes.
And to verify. But he's also mentioned that when this legacy media finds a platform to charge you for the information to verify, then you move to the next platform. So where's the balance? Because you would need to get a trade-off there. And we're lost.
Yes. I think what Makali is saying is so true. I think there is, within the management teams at the various media houses, there needs to be some blue sky thinking going on, because there's so many changes happening that they need to take care of. But one of the things that is a big challenge is this whole breaking news kind of culture that we have now gotten, where we believe that every day we have to have a hot story, and and we're trying to outcompete each other. And this is compounded by the fact that we have this concept of citizen journalism, which is growing. So if you don't break the story, some guy in Kayole will break the story faster than you, you know. So there's, I think it's a very challenging time to be in the newsroom. But I think one of the things that makes people very skeptical about the current set of journalists is the fact that the quality of reporting has really gone down. And I think this is partly because there are issues to do with finances. You know, a media house just cannot allocate like a lot of money to a story. There's pressure on the management to deliver within certain parameters. But I think one of the things that can help is what Makali is talking about, and this is mentorship. One of the things that really helped when we were young journalists was that the older journalists really mentored us. And you couldn't take a story to press before it met certain basic tenets. And people like Philip Ocheng, I worked under Philip Ocheng, my first job was under Philip Ocheng. He would never carry the story unless it was, you know, it was a complete story. Yeah. So he would keep pushing you back. Go and get this source, go and talk to another source. There was no rush to put the story out just because you had done it. Yes. So I think there's a responsibility, particularly on the editors, to take up a mentorship role, especially with these younger journalists, because the reality is that you can't afford the Macharia guy to have 10 of them in the newsroom.
Going back to Macharia.
You go bust. But
I wish I was watching you guys.
What's your net value? You keep asking the politicians.
You do need to work with the younger journalists, and you must invest in them, and you must invest time, and you must invest resources to bring them up. So I think one of the challenges we have is that young journalists are getting promoted too fast. So even before a person can write a decent story, they're already the editor. I
hope you're not flagging my promotion. I think I saw it in the blogs.
Yeah. and then you have a situation where that editor is not good enough, and that's why we have so many lousy headlines. Have you noticed that we make mistakes even on the masthead? You see mistakes, you wake up in the morning, you see the headline, and you're like, how did that even happen? Yes. So it's actually having a ripple effect, and I think we need that addressed.
But I would not entirely agree that the newspapers of today are completely, are that bad. I think they're pretty good by any standards, and I challenge anybody, take today's papers, go to the library and take the Nation and the Standard of
1980,
10 years ago, of 20 years ago, of 30 years ago, of 40 years ago, and just compare. First of all, there has been a complete shift. I think because today's papers are bolder, and they're trying to bring in more of interpretative journalism.
And day two journalism.
Journalism, yes. Investigative reports, long reads, and lots of opinion pieces. I came from a time when a newspaper from A to Z was reports of he said, she said, he said, she said. So the ball game has changed. And I think in this, it's much more difficult to produce a newspaper today because of the content required. You have to put much more thought into it than you did 20 years ago. That is true.
But the reason we're not selling as many copies, perhaps, is it the people are disinterested, or they've moved online and we haven't moved?
I think it is the platform. Let me call it evolution. People have moved away from what you might call it dead trees. Yes. To news which is so more easily packaged, which you can get on your phone or on your laptop or on your iPad.
Yes.
As simple as that.
Yeah.
And the younger people of today don't buy even if you get them the best newspaper in the world, they will not buy it because they prefer to read it online.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
on the move, wherever they are.
Kibi, as sub-editor at the Star, you can tell us your experience as you try to get people to migrate to the digital space.
Well, for instance, I will tell you, for the Star website has been doing really well. Like, for instance, we crossed over 4 million in July of last year. That was a growth, I think, from a 2.4 in 2017. So yes, we are being read online, and I think what people are looking for are unique stories. For instance, if you get a human interest story. I mean, not any other story that is with any other platform. I think you get more traction to that. So the difficulty of doing that is like, what I can say, you see it, then other people pick it up, and you know, as she says, this breaking news thing. So everyone is getting wants a lot of traffic and stuff. So I don't think there's a challenge, but also there's also, as she said, yes, I have gone under, I mean, veteran journalist Matthew Gadegera, I mean, Makali, Victoria Graham, and there's that mentorship, fine. But then we are developing now into a digital platform. I don't think these guys understand as much about digital platform as they do the print, which they worked for a long time. So I think there's that break. Yeah, how do you write online? So now I think what we need probably is training on how to report online well, or digital. I think that training, but I realize there's that break.
I believe a good story is a good story.
The biggest gap is how to monetize. You may boast 4 million readers.
Exactly. Now that's the big problem.
How much money are you making from it?
No, that's the revenue part.
Then there's going to be an effect, because sooner or later you'll be laying off people.
Makali, closing word on this before we move on to what everyone is saying.
First of all, I think I expect more and better journalism from today's journalists than the yesteryears that Macharia referred to. Because the tools of our trade have also pretty gone miles ahead. The society has opened up more. The challenges we had looking for stories to get an investigative piece, you had hell to get documents and whatnot. Today, people are sharing documents all over the place. It's up to you to look deeply and find what is exciting and that's not been presented in the social media, and package it for your audiences. So it calls for creativity, speed, versatility, really, for you to survive. The monetization part is now the big challenge, because the information that we used to sell has been socialized, and we are still trying to commercialize it. So we are going to be on the losing end for a very long time. But I mourn the day that we say journalism as we know it has died and has been replaced by something else I don't want to know. Because the processing of information that is done by journalism is not yet replaced by any other process. And so those who are dismissing journalism and journalism generally are actually calling for Armageddon.
Wow.
Because it will be a tough day when you have nowhere to verify anything and you're groping in the dark for any truth.
And then anything goes. There will be some anarchy.
Just to respond to...
Real quick before you take a break.
He mentions about the speed of processing, but now we have another challenge, that is fake news. You go really fast. We are good in breaking news. I think if you don't find it on the Star fast, then
advertise yourself. Why don't you?
An invoice. But the thing is, the challenge that comes with that is fake news. How now do you verify? So as much as you want to go fast, then you need to be very cautious. So that's another.
To verify.
Exactly.